describe one of these academic digs for me on like an experiential level. So I have seen a video. Actually, we're going to play a little clip of it. This is the wake up routine on one of these academic digs.
I have learned a number of things from Dr. Carr on these digs. One is that we have to start our day early because it gets way too hot to work in the afternoon.
Yeah, what I would like is for you to kind of go into like a little bit of like the camp atmosphere and like kind of that stuff, because I think that'll make it like relatable for people. People will be able to picture themselves in that and also doing the science, which I think is appealing.
From 2006 to 2011, we used to camp out on the field.
Cool.
We had a safari tent. People would bring out their own individual tents, and that was an interesting experience. So like in the clip, that's how I got people out of bed in the morning at around 6 a.m. Not everyone really appreciated it, but we had to do something like that. And that's with students and with volunteers. So it's part of the experience, getting woken up in such an obnoxious way. Usually the way the day would work is get up early, get breakfast, brush teeth, all that junk. Then we'd assemble at a specific place and then head out. So either to a quarry or to prospect, what have you, whatever the project for the day might be. But at the end of the day, it's hard work, and it's a very primal experience because you're out there, especially camping in the elements. There's no temperature control, anything like that. So by 1 p.m., we'd have to head back to camp because it was just simply too hot to think, let alone walk. And so we'd lose the entire afternoon, right? Temperatures peak at around 3. It takes hours for that to cool down. And we'd be lucky if we had the energy to continue into the evening. And just camping is just logistically really hard. We have to carry water jugs, we have to haul all our crap out there, huge Tupperwares full of, tin food, which is really heavy. It's a physical experience and it's draining. And the conditions are primitive. We'd be cooking on these little, Coleman stoves in the tent, and that takes forever to do. And, so we eventually decided to hell with this. We're renting a house, and that's what we've done ever since. And also we rent ATVs, and the advantage there is that with a house, people can sleep uninterrupted. We can have fans in the house to keep people cool. There's a fridge with cold things to drink, which people need, whether, it's at night, during the day. The ATVs cuts out all the hiking, which we'd have to do when camping. And people, after working hard in a quarry all day, just want to sit and get carried back to the house so people can recoup as we're leaving the field, instead of leaving the field becoming a whole labor in and of itself.
Sure.
So we finally smartened up in 2011. So 2012 forward, we've been renting a house and ATVs and such, which has changed the experience. Like, it's for the people, right? And, with camping, everyone's beat down, sometimes seriously beat down, like not, emergency room serious, but just depleted. And I was vulnerable to that as well. And it's no fun after, week 2 or whatever. So I view part of our obligation to our volunteers and students is to have the best experience possible and just take out the exhausting aspects as much as possible.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
No, that's great.
And also another aspect of all this is that volunteers provide feedback where students might not. And a lot of our changes, like with the ATVs and such, came from a suggestion from a very good volunteer who found many tremendous things while out with us. So I'm willing to listen. And that's, I think, really important in terms of leading these expeditions and delegating tasks. We had a very good field assistant for a number of years, and his motto was, each year we get a little bit better. So we actively try to learn, okay, what can we fix? What can we improve? So in 24, our great leap forward was bringing out a huge cooler full of cold drinks with ice. And what that did was just boost morale, because people in the quarry knew that at every break there's a cold drink waiting for them.
Are they beers?
NA beers,
Okay.
diet sodas, Gatorade, this sort of thing.
I know a way that you can even bring the morale up a little bit more. So it's true. Dr. Thomas Carr has fun sometimes.
Yes, on occasion. Try to keep that under control.
So we've been on a bunch of commercial digs, and we've taken viewers along ostensibly at this point with that Day in the Life series that I'm sure you're going to love. Tell me about academic digs.
Mm-hmm.
Commercial digs, I have noticed, have a lot of care and attentiveness in them. I don't think that you would see anything objectionable except the ends of that process. Like I found that they respect fossils deeply, and particularly folks like Peter Larson and Clayton Phipps. Like those are like real dudes, but there is all sorts of data collection. There's all sorts of like really cool stuff that happens on these academic digs. Walk me through an academic dig as if we were pulling up to the site and we were going to get started.
Well, for the quarry that we have, it's called Juno's Grove. It was found by an undergraduate student from the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, who took the course with a bunch of his, fellow students from there, and also Carthage kids. So Mason found the shoulder blade eroding out. We had a bunch of our parties that summer, so what Mason and I did was uncover part of the bone where the hill had slumped on it. We winterized it, we put a jacket on it, and then buried it, like put a tarp over it, buried it for later field season. So basically the way it proceeds is we kill the hill. So we had a whole crew of 15 people basically taking out a third of a hill to get to the bone layer. And as we approached the bone layer, the rate of progress slowed down. We switched from, shovels to trowels. And then at bone layer, what we did was proceed from the outer edge of the quarry to the back wall that we dug. And so using trowels, that controls the speed. And so if we run into something, it isn't,
you
theoretically
just kick a shovel through it.
Yeah, we don't do that. But care is taken. We map fossils that are in place, technically called in situ, as we go across. Luckily at this quarry, there's trees. So we were able to tie a reference line for mapping from one tree to the next across the full width of the quarry. That's usually we have to drive stakes to do that, but in this case it was a bit different. And then, mapping proceeded. For small fossils, those were bagged. Each bag gets labeled with the date, the person who found the fossil, the locality, and then there's a paper label that's put in there as well with date, the person's name, what the fossils are, and various other key information. So that goes into a Ziploc, which goes into a Tupperware. For the big fossils, those also get mapped and also jacketed. So I think it's based broadly similar to what most commercial folks do. In addition to that, we have our sedimentologist, who is basically mapping out the stratigraphy of our entire field area. And so our concern is tying in all these quarries and other localities into the big picture of our area. And so his concern was a couple things. The first was the sedimentology, as what kind of rock is the fossil in, and it was a loose sandstone, probably on a point bar, the inner bend of a river. And that led into questions of taphonomy, which is the science of burial. Our Triceratops, it's one individual, but the bones are disarticulated, which means the skeleton is in pieces. The bones are complete, but the bones have been washed downriver. a short distance and scattered a bit. And so we have a bit of insight of the process of burial there. We know that the river current, sped up or ripped out a floodplain and then basically buried the Triceratops that's lying on the sand with what's called a conglomerate. So it's a mix of sand and clay balls. The clay comes from a floodplain that had to have been ripped up and then dropped by a river suddenly decelerating. So we've got a bit of insight into the process of burial there. And what our sedimentologist will do is tie in Juno's Grove with sort of reference layers of rock in our area that are continuous across several miles. The Hell Creek is notorious for not having many rock layers that continue very far, but there's been a lot of great work done north of where we are up in the Fort Peck region and also adjacent spots in North Dakota. And there's these reference sands. There's 3 main sands, and we've identified a couple of those. So we can tie in our discoveries into the regional picture. And so we're very interested in sort of the context of and placement of every discovery we make in terms of the regional, regional geological picture too. But, collection's fairly straightforward, like with a big jacket, we've got to flip it, take out sediment from the other side to lighten it, cap it, hoist it onto the back of a ATV, drive it out, then take it to the museum. And at the museum, fossils get prioritized. I usually set the priorities of, what gets prepped first, what gets prepped later.
How do you do that?
Well, if we find theropod material, that's at the top of the list because theropods, by and large, are rare. There's a bias against them. Their bones are delicate. Even Tyrannosaur bones are delicate. They're hollow. They're basically kind of like giant flightless birds is one way of thinking about them. They aren't literally birds, but they have hollow bones. They're easily broken. And so they're relatively rare. We usually find isolated theropod bones. But if they're close to my corner of the sandbox, if it's Tyrannosaur material, then that gets attention. And also there's interesting fossils. So there's some really great work done at the Museum of the Rockies on Triceratops evolution. So Triceratops from the bottom of the Hell Creek look different from the ones in the middle of the Hell Creek Formation, and those look different from the Triceratops around before the extinction. And so I'm very interested in testing that hypothesis. I have no reason to think it's not true, but Triceratops skulls are also a priority, and they're big. They take a lot of time. So the rate of progress on those is relatively low, but that is a scientific priority that I have. Other paleontologists might not have the same interest, so a bit of it's individualistic. But Tyrannosaur material, that's always a priority.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I have the time, then I can roll that stuff into research projects.
Cool.
And then, then the fossils get conserved and all that good stuff and stay at the museum. But also, for birds and mammals, I make it a priority to reach out to colleagues that work on those groups. And I send them pictures and facilitate a loan. And it turns out that our crew found a brand new species of predatory bird.
Cool.
Based on a foot bone that was found during one of our expeditions. It's called Avisaurus darwini, and an excellent team at the Field Museum wrote that up. I think that was back in 2024. We found some very interesting mammal material that we've sent off to the Burke Museum for study. So part of the effort is to promote not necessarily collaboration, but to get the fossils studied, to get the attention they really need, because I don't know everything about everything. And so I want, specialist colleagues to have, a chance to identify stuff that's important and what they might want to work on. I don't need to work on everything. I have no interest in that. I want to see the science thrive. So that's one of my tasks, is to reach out to other experts and get some real work done.
It sounds a lot like collaboration to me.
Yeah. But it's collaboration. Like, I'm not on those projects.
Right, you're facilitating them being able
facilitator.
to. No, it's cool.
But the field stuff for our research area, that is collaborative between the three of us.
For the full episode we got this clip from, click that top video there. For more clips, click that playlist right there. You got time for one more, man. Tell them there was traffic or something. Ooh, tell them there was a bear. I was going to be like, how big was the bear? It's a good excuse.